So anytime I have the opportunity to talk about America Seed Fund, I always want to start with the underlying value proposition right up front. Fundamentally, America Seed Fund is an opportunity for funding, right? It's funding to support technology-based startups. It's funding to transition innovative research and development into commercial products and services, right? Beyond the funding, one of the key aspects of America Seed Fund is it allows the recipients of those funds, these innovative small businesses, to maintain all ownership in their company. You keep the equity in your company, right? This funding does not reduce your ownership. You get to lead your company in the underlying technological development and the way that you want to. It's entirely your call. And really relevant to today's conversation is through America's Seed Fund, the intellectual property that's developed as a result of this funding, whatever inventions that may result of it, you own it. As a small business, you own that intellectual property and you can then commercialize that intellectual property. So if you don't walk away with anything else from today's webinar, I just want you to know America's Seed Fund provides you with the funding, the credibility, and the network that will allow you as a small innovative company to really develop new technologies that could have the potential of changing the world. So with that, let's move on to the next slide. Right. So America Seed Fund provides a geographically dispersed funding opportunity at a significant scale. On average, every year, more than 4,000 companies are funded through America Seed Fund. At its core, for these companies, America Seed Fund represents funding for research and development that has the potential for commercial success. These companies range in size from 1 to 500 employees and represent every state and all territories have received an award. I'm actually excited. Up until this year, the territory of Guam had never received the SBIR STTR award, but even this year, a Phase 1 award was made to a company there. So America Seed Fund is providing an opportunity for the most innovative research and developers and small businesses to really access this much needed funding. The funding is significant when you look at it across the program. In fiscal year 22, more than $4.6 billion were made in SBIR, STTR, so America Seed Fund awards to innovative small businesses. Annually, this program provides over $4 billion every year. That's important because this is a consistent source of innovative funding for our innovative entrepreneurs. And again, I'm just going to reiterate this a number of times. Although this is a federal program, the government is a partner. The government is not an owner. The government provides you the funding. The competitive process enhances your credibility, but you as the small business remain the owner and retain all the intellectual property rights to the development of the technologies that are developed through this program. All right, next slide. All right. At its core, this is really the most salient aspect of the program. This funding is non-dilutive. Non-dilutive funding represents capital that doesn't require a business owner to give up equity in their company. Right? It's something that you don't have to repay, and you don't devalue, you don't dilute the ownership share of your company. It means America's Seed Fund allows you to chart a path towards commercialization following your own vision. It provides the capital to de-risk that technology, which will enhance your future capital needs, right? When you're developing technologies, to the extent that early on you can take non-dilutive funding, it puts you in a much stronger position downstream when you do need to seek other sources of capital to more scale or more on a large scale commercialize your technology. So the non-dilutive funding aspect is a critical component of America's Seed Fund. Next slide. So here's how the program works, right? It is a federal program, right? So through the Small Business Administration, we have federal-wide policy oversight and coordination. So we set the rules, we manage the program, we do the oversight. But the actual underlying funding is provided through our 11 federal agency partners. I would say this, when I think about America's Seed Fund, I think it's a brilliant design. the way this program works. So fundamentally, what America's Seed Fund does is it looks at the largest federal research and development agencies. Think about the National Science Foundation, the Department of Defense, our National Institutes of Health, the Department of Energy, NASA, to name a few. And it basically forces them to create a more competitive marketplace for research and development. Typically, when we think about research and development from a federal expenditure perspective, we think about funding going to academia, some of the larger system integrators, like the big Department of Defense prime contractors, other federal research and development centers, and other labs. What this program basically says is those federal agencies, to the extent that they are spending over $100 million every year on external research and development, they must compete a portion of that with innovative small businesses. It basically says they have to compete at least 3.2% of that externally contracted research and development with small businesses. In doing so, it creates a broader competitive research and development landscape by competing those funds amongst these small innovative firms. This really allows the federal government to harness the small business ingenuity. What we know is this: across a number of metrics, small businesses are more cost competitive. In many instances, they are more innovative. They patent at a higher rate than larger businesses. So making sure that they're able to compete and be a part of that R&D landscape is really important. The other core component is all of these awards are focused on developing things that have a commercial opportunity. The interest through America's Seed Fund is really providing research and development funding that can lead to commercial products and services in the marketplace. Similarly, its sister program. So America's Seed Fund is really comprised of two programs: Small Business Innovation Research Program, which I just described, as well as the Small Business Technology Transfer Program. Its sister program is very similar, but it's only participated in by a small subset of the 11 agencies, so 6 of the agencies. And the STTR program fundamentally requires agencies with over $1 billion in this externally contracted research and development to assess 0.045%, so a much smaller percentage, to also have the STTR program. The real key with the STTR program is the focus is facilitating technology development and transfer between small businesses and nonprofit research institutions. So we'll talk a little bit about that more on the next slide. All right, next slide, please. All right, great. So when I think about, one way to think about the SBIR and the STTR program is determining which program is right for you. All right. So I will say this: the heart of this funding, that 4.6 billion I described earlier, 88% of that America's Seed Fund funding is comprised of the SBIR program. And the key here is through the SBIR program, as a small business, as a small company, you can pursue this research and development entirely independently, right? You can choose to go it entirely alone, or you can choose to partner as a part of that program. What's different with the STTR program is that the STTR program requires you as a small business to partner with a nonprofit research institution. So why would you as a small business be interested in doing that, partnering with a nonprofit research institution? A great way to think about that process is capacity, your small business capacity and opportunities to supplement that capacity. For example, if you're working in an area where you may need access to specific or unique expertise or equipment, a lot of times our academic universities and other nonprofit research institutions are a great place to get access to those capabilities. And STTR creates a mechanism where you can do that under the award. Another opportunity, which I want to see more and more small businesses take advantage of, is STTR is a great mechanism for university-based technology spin-out opportunities. Whether you're a academic, a postdoc, or you're working in a university environment right now, if you've developed intellectual property with that university and you're looking to commercialize that as a small business, the STTR program is a great mechanism to get funding to start that process of spending out and commercializing that while maintaining a relationship with the university to supplement and support that research. Universities often generate intellectual property, but they don't necessarily commercialize it. They look for opportunities to license or spin that technology out into the marketplace. And STTR is a great way to take advantage of that while maintaining a relationship and linking to the expertise that led to the generation of that IP. Whether you choose SBIR or STTR, please know this. Under either program, as a small business, you are the recipient of the award, right? So even though you're going to partner through the STTR program, that nonprofit research institution will not be the recipient of the award. You will be as the small business. So either way, you will be the one sort of charting the direction and charting the path of that development. Next slide. Right. One of the things that traces back to the original creation of the SBIR program more than 40 years ago was a goal to increase participation across diverse communities, including women-owned small businesses, socially and economically disadvantaged small businesses, as well as rural small businesses. So one of the things we've actually started to look at over the last few years is a equity metric. What I'm happy to report is that when we look at this metric and we think about the opening doorway of SBIR, the Phase 1 awards, that 34% of Phase 1 awards are being received by underserved communities, including women-owned, minority-owned, veteran-owned small businesses, as well as small businesses in rural, geographically rural areas or hub zone areas. The reason I share this is America's Seed Fund is an equitable, competitive opportunity across the board. We fundamentally want to make sure we have the opportunity to fund the most innovative ideas that have significant commercial potential. We don't ultimately know where the best ideas are going to come from, but we want everyone to know that this is a opportunity for them, irrespective of their race, their background, their geographic locations. All right. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about the program and the process. Right? America's Seed Fund is a phased program. Right? In most instances, 95% of companies who start the process working with either the SBIR or the STTR program, America's Seed Fund, they're going to start at Phase 1. Phase 1 is really the front door to America's Seed Fund. The goal of Phase 1 is really to prove a proof of concept. Think of Phase 1 this way. If you have a very innovative idea, Phase 1 will give you the resources to prove that science will allow you to implement it, to execute upon this idea. It really is to demonstrate the viability of the proposed innovation with indications of its commercial success. Across our federal agency partners, the amount of funding you may get at Phase 1 may range from a low of around $50,000 up to $300,000. The process of proving that viability typically lasts 6 to 12 months. The whole goal is Phase 1 is really the entry point into the program. And most importantly, by winning a Phase 1 award, it really unlocks the opportunity for you to compete for a Phase 2. Phase 2 is really the heart of America's Seed Fund. This is the prototype development phase, right? When you think about Phase 2, this is where you actually do get significant research and development funds. And your goal under a Phase 2 is straightforward. At the end of a Phase 2, what you want to do is get the technology, the idea, the innovation developed to a point where you can either demonstrate it as a minimal viable product, you are at a point where it's a prototype stage. The whole goal of Phase 2 is to demonstrate both to the marketplace and potential investors that you de-risk the technology. While Phase 2 funding is significant, it may not be sufficient to get your concept into a finalized product or service, but it should be enough for you to really de-risk the development. Maybe get some of your initial sales, secure some of your initial customers, and really signal to other investors in the marketplace that this particular innovation has a place, has a path, and that can really help you when you're attracting additional sources of funding to develop it further. Phase 2 awards typically last 1 year to 2 years, and the funding may range up to $2 million. So this is a significant level of research and development funding, but I do acknowledge that 2 million in and of itself may not be enough to get you all the way home with that development. Phase three, I will admit, is a bit more complicated. So for some of you, if you're developing a technology that I, as a consumer, can access and purchase directly on in the public marketplace, for you, phase three is really a reflection of your success. Um, it's really just going to be the result of your success. Right? However, if you're working on a technology that helps a federal agency need, phase three has a very different connotation. So think of this example. If you're working on a new sensor technology that's going to allow the United States Air Force to have better surveillance via their drones on drone missions, right? In that case, phase three is a really powerful tool. Phase three basically means that you can unlock the ability for sole source awards amongst federal agencies, right? What does that mean? It's because you were competitive and successful at phase one, right? To get into the doorway and start to develop this innovative idea. Because you developed that innovative idea into a prototype under phase two through the same program. What the federal government is saying is you don't have to compete again to receive a phase three award if a federal agency wants to procure that innovation. So this really is a very powerful tool that's provided through the SBIR and the STTR program if the federal government is ultimately one of your customers, right? If the federal government is not your customer, again, then phase three is really more so your overall general commercial success. Right. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, this program is focused on small, innovative businesses, right? So one of those questions becomes, are you eligible, right? So the basic eligibility criteria for America's Seed Fund is this. You must be a for-profit entity, right? Again, this program is all about stimulating economic and commercial success through innovative research and development. So you must be a for-profit business. You must be located in the United States. All of the research and development work has to occur in the United States. As long as you're under 500 employees, there's no revenue caps. It is a number of employee cap, so you have to be 500 or less employees. And then the company has to be owned and controlled by U.S. citizens or permanent residents, right? Through this program, it does not matter if you are a 2 to 3 person team with a new novel idea and you're just starting up, or if you've been an established small business for 20 plus years, but you're at 498 employees. Across that spectrum, you are eligible to pursue the opportunities through America's Seed Fund. All right. Next slide. So I like to share this slide in terms of the funding areas to really connote a few things. One, throughout the year, the way this program works is our federal agency partners, they provide funding opportunities throughout the year, quarterly, often certain areas it's going to move towards monthly. The way they do that is they either do one or two ways. They identify what we'll call a topic. A topic is basically a target technology area or a specific technology requirement that they may have, right? So if you think about some of our agencies like the Department of Defense, sometimes they have specific technology development opportunities that they need solved to resolve a capability gap. And they may put out a topic and give you the guide and say, we need to solve this problem. In other areas, they're going to say what we're looking for is the most innovative approaches to ag technology. And we want you as the potential company and the potential researcher to give us your ideas. And we would then fund those ideas, right? The real key is across the 11 federal agencies, there's very likely 1 to 2 agencies that could fund research and development within your technology area, as long as it has that potential for commercial opportunities. It has a potential to actually make its way into a product or a service, right? Next slide. So how do you really navigate this process, right? I have no expectations. I have no interest in you all becoming experts on all of the 11 participating agencies, right? I don't think that's the right approach. So I'd like to encourage people to think about it by saying, hey, starting with what you know, right? You know your innovation, you know your technology, you know the areas you're working with. So if you're thinking about America Seed Fund, one way to start is to ask yourself a simple question. If you develop your proposed idea, if it is successful, who will buy it? Whose problem will it solve? And through that process, it should help you navigate if you need to focus on market-driven agencies or mission-driven agencies. So think about it this way. If you're developing a technology that I, as a everyday consumer in the public, can purchase, chances are you want to focus on a market-driven agency. A market-driven agency, they basically fund innovative ideas. They won't ever necessarily be your customer, but they're going to fund innovative ideas that align to their mission. So if you're developing a new novel health therapeutic, drug therapeutic, that will ultimately make its way into the marketplace, well, that's really going to be market driven, right? And you're going to want to focus on the National Institutes of Health, the National Science Foundation, right? If you're working on something that's going to help us, help NASA, so, reach Mars, then that's more a mission-driven element, right? There's dual use opportunities in certain areas, but primarily NASA can be your customer in the end. They can buy the sensors or the technology that you develop. And that's where you want to think about mission driven. So I encourage people by starting and asking yourself, who's going to be the customer? If that federal agency or a federal agency can be the customer, then focus on the mission driven agencies because it provides a lot of value in terms of potential phase 3 opportunities. If that agency ultimately won't be the customer, well, focus on market driven because what they're really going to focus on is providing you the funding, providing you the investment, and really supporting you as you navigate the commercial landscape. So here's some advice. Right? One, start by casting a wide net. Right? So go with an open mind. Then think about your innovation in the technology area that you're working in. Think about who will solve it. And I'm just going to make a plug on SBIR.gov. This is sort of the main website for America Seed Fund. We have a catalog of every award that's ever been funded through the program, and it's been over 200,000 awards received by 30,000 plus businesses. What you can do is you can say, great, here's my innovation area, here's my technology area. Come up with your few keywords, and you can start to search SBIR.gov. And this all of a sudden becomes a very powerful market research tool for this reason. When you see the different agencies who funded research in those areas in the past, it is a great indicator of who will fund that in the future. It also gives you insight in terms of where people may be close to your area and what you would need to do to be sort of the next state of the art and the next layer of development, right? Once you identify those one or two agencies, focus your energy on them, understand their process, their timing, so you will be prepared when an opportunity presents itself for you to apply and compete for America's Seed Fund. Right? Next slide, please. Right. One of the things that we are able to do through SBA is really make sure that that broader support mechanism is in place. We understand that we want to make sure that you're able to navigate this process to access and compete for SBIR, STTR awards. One way we do that is through our federal and state technology program, FAST. Right now, we have FAST awardees in 42 states and the territory of Puerto Rico. These organizations are there to support companies as they are thinking of applying for SBIR or STTR award. They can help match you to the right agency. In certain instances, they'll provide technical assistance. They may provide an opportunity to review your proposals, give you feedback. They may actually, in other cases, provide what we'll call phase 0 support, right? So there is an opportunity cost when you pursue any activity, right? So if you're going to spend the time and energy to put forward a very competitive proposal, that's going to be time and energy away from other activities. Certain FAST awardees provide phase 0 funding, right? Monetary funds, grants to sort of help you defray the cost of developing these proposals. So if America Seed Fund seems like it could be the opportunity for you, I just want to encourage you to always look to see if there is a fast recipient within your state. If there is a fast recipient within your state, that's always the best place to start, even with just an initial conversation, because they really are going to help you navigate this process and get you on the right track. If we don't have a fast resource in your state, on SBIR.gov, we do have a local assistance tool where you can put in your state and your area, and you can see the other resource partners we may have who can provide support to technology-driven and technology-based entrepreneurs. All right. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned earlier, America's Seed Fund has been having an impact in company success for more than 40 years. One of the first recipients, early participants in the program was Qualcomm, and America's Seed Fund had a oversized impact in the development of that company and their success. You can see some of the others, and here's the beautiful part about America's Seed Fund. Right. I'll share a little about iRobot. I have a Roomba at home, in my home, and a lot of people don't realize this, but this company actually started um, as a Department of Defense contractor. They did a lot of work with the Department of Defense and the Army, and the underlying technology that they developed that led its way to the Roomba was originally funded through the Department of Defense. So there is a dual use element to American Seed Fund. They ultimately pivoted into the commercial marketplace. But America Seed Fund, because they get to own that intellectual property, creates space for you to pivot and to go into different marketplaces and options, right? One example I've been sharing more and more recently is on the NASA DART mission, right? So I'm not sure how many in the audience are familiar with the NASA DART mission. But basically, um, if you're like me, I've always watched the Hollywood movies where everything's going well, and we wake up one morning and there's something coming from outer space that presents a threat. You can think about the Deep Impacts, the Armageddons, right? And typically the response is we're going to assemble a team. The United States has often taken the lead in terms of those movies, assembling those teams, and we're going to, create a response to avoid an extinction level event. Well, around September of 2022, NASA actually executed a proof of concept on this concept on this on this Hollywood story through their NASA DART mission. DART stands for Double Asteroid Redirection Test. What NASA basically said is we wanted to demonstrate a proof of concept to see if we can identify an asteroid, understand its natural path, develop a mechanism to crash something into that asteroid to see if we can move it off its course. It really is a future proof of concept for an extinction level event. This obviously piqued my interest. So I reached out to my NASA colleagues. I read everything about that. And one of the things that happened was this. First, they were successful. They developed a satellite. They flew it into the asteroid, and all of the data, all of the tracking since that time in September, around September of 2022, has indicated that they were able to move it off course. But here's the interesting part for me. When you look at the details of that mission, the underlying wings, so the actual wings that took that satellite into the asteroid were funded through America Seed Fund. They were developed by a small business. And this is the beauty of America Seed Fund. There may not be significant, broad market opportunities for wings that are going to fly outer space, right? That's a smaller marketplace. But through America Seed Fund, that small business was able to develop that. And when they originally developed that technology, it was not focused on this particular mission. But because it was developed, because it was in place, it helped contribute to this mission. I share that to say this. When we are thinking about America Seed Fund, our agency partners are really looking to fund and create opportunities for our most innovative small businesses and researchers because we don't actually know what all the future challenges will present us. But we do know this. As long as we're creating opportunities for the most innovative ideas to be developed and tested and commercialized, we're going to be in a much stronger position to be able to solve those problems. And I think the NASA DART mission is a great example of that. This is really setting the seed to be able to solve a future problem that could really, avoid an extinction level event. So with that, you can go to the next slide. I want to thank you all. I think I'll hang around for some Q&A if there are questions. But fundamentally, we really do believe that if you are a innovator, if you have innovative, cutting edge research and development ideas, America Seed Fund is an opportunity for you. And with the NASA DART mission, literally, this is a space where you can develop innovative ideas that could change the world. So again, Carlos, thank you. Thank you, SBTO. I'm going to stick around and looking forward to any Q&A. Carlos, back to you.
Had to fix my camera there. Thank you very much, Eric, for that great overview. A lot of great information. Certainly one of the best programs for early stage funding. So I think definitely all of our participants should definitely be looking at those programs. We got a couple of questions here for you. Let me pull it up. One of them is, are there any specific topics or industries or types of projects that are more likely to be considered for the fast track program that you mentioned?
Sure. So let me answer this in a few ways. So one, typically the federal agencies are going to fund topics that align to their mission. So the Department of Education is going to be interested in education technology, so ed tech, or things that's going to enhance the learning of our students, whether it's K through 12 or the college levels. When we think about, so one, you want to make sure you're aligning to those agencies' missions. In terms of fast track, so a lot of times when we describe fast track with the framework, the SBIR, STTR program, a few agencies, for example, the National Institutes of Health and the Department of Energy, our ARPA-E, they may have fast track opportunities. And what that really means is it's an opportunity to submit both a phase 1 and a phase 2 at the same time, right? So those are going to be less technology driven and more guided by the agency in terms of those particular mechanisms. So if that's something you're interested in, I would just encourage you, if you have technologies that align to those particular mission spaces, you can look for there.
Okay, great. Thank you. The next question is, let me make sure I word this right. I don't want to get it wrong here. Is it permissible to seek outside funding while applying for SBIR funding?
Yes, absolutely. So there are no restrictions in terms of your sources of funding, right? So if you're in the process of raising capital, you can continue to raise that capital, whether it's before the application process or after award. Here's the key, though. What you cannot do is, if you are working or if you're proposing a research and development activity, you can't receive funding to do that exact same activity from multiple sources, right? That would become a duplicative effort. So that's something you have to steer clear of. But the whole concept of raising capital, growing your company, pursuing other opportunities, that's always something you can do concurrently with SBIR applications or awards.
Okay, great. Next, are there some best practices that you can recommend for early stage planning for folks that are, maybe don't have a lot of experience and are looking at maybe applying for their first one? What kind of things that they should concentrate on? I know there's some things associated with grants management compliance. Maybe you can speak to that as well.
Sure, absolutely. So if you're really early in the process, you haven't made the decision to actually participate or not, a few things I think you can do to get yourself a really good platform. One, and it seems minor, but it's actually very important if you're going to ever do work with the federal government, register in sam.gov right now, right? If you have an established business, just start that process, have your registration, get that out the way. Because sometimes if you see an opportunity, you may have 30 days to put a proposal together, respond to that particular opportunity. If you're not set up in sam.gov, and if that's not resolved in those 30 days, you may not have the opportunity. So that's something you can do right now that's actionable. Two, really think about your technology area to identify the agency or agencies who could potentially fund it, right? So I gave the advice earlier in terms of taking some of your key technology words, looking at SBIR.gov to see who's funded things in that area in the past. The reason that's important, if you identify an agency, so let's say the National Science Foundation, right now, before you are ever actually actively applying, you can go to their website. We link from SBIR.gov and actually see all the rules of their requirements. How many pages you're going to have to provide in the response, what they're going to look at, right? They're going to look at your people, the technical innovation, the commercial potential, and really start to create a game plan for developing that proposal. The other thing I would say is this. Also, take a look to see if we do have a fast resource partner in your state. And the reason I say that is they have playbooks. They actually have people who can help you say, great, here's a playbook that over multiple weeks, here are the things you can do to make sure you're going to get that proposal on time. And a lot of times, one of the more valuable things they do is have people who can give you a clean set of eyes. These are competitive narratives, and sometimes you're so close to it, you may miss elements. But having that resource, whether it's fast or just a few of your friends who aren't as close to the technology, do a read on your proposal can really help you in terms of putting a really solid proposal together. There are, I would say this in terms of the grants management or the compliance elements. The way it typically works is there are requirements in terms of, whether it's a grant or a contract, but typically at a phase one earlier on, they're more limited, right? As the funding goes up in phase two is where you have to have more structures in place. I just say that to say that that should not be a discouragement to anyone, right? Because at a phase one, it's easy for you, even as a small 2 or 3 person company, to be fully compliant with the terms of those awards. And as you go through that process, now you have award, you have funding, you can put other processes in place as you go to the phase two and some of the larger dollar amounts.
I was on mute there. Thank you for that response, Eric. It's great information. I know that there's also organizations that help folks with the grant writing. Is that accurate? Like in the private sector?
Yeah, so there are. So we typically don't necessarily encourage the private sector support, right? You may avail yourself of any resource you want, but through our federal and state technology program, a lot of times what they do is they have consultants on staff who can provide kind of in-kind support for that grant writing mechanism, right? So to the extent when we think about these small businesses, we know resources are precious. To the extent you can leverage some of the free resources to support the development of your proposals first, I always encourage people to start there before you're having to put dollars out of your pocket to get that type of support.
Terrific. I'll have one more and then we'll see if Sean's back on. And if not, I'll go ahead and pick up this presentation. Last one here is, does the SBIR STTR program publish specific programming needs such as grants.gov?
Yes, great question. So so there's a few places where we do this. So one, on SBIR.gov, right, when the agencies have their various needs, they add them there. Many times they also, if it's a granting agency, will have them on grants.gov. But I always encourage people to sort of start with SBIR.gov because you're going to be able to sort of see all 11 in a centralized way. And once you identify that 1 or 2 agencies that can really fund what you're researching, that's where you may want to spend more time focusing on their particular area, or if they are a granting agency, grants.gov.
Can an organization apply for multiple agencies at once? So you say DOE and DOT, Department of Transportation.
Yes, you can. A few notes there. One, if you're applying to multiple agencies with different concepts, different lines of research and inquiry, no concerns, you're straightforward, you're fine. If you're applying to multiple agencies under the same project, saying, hey, this is our idea, and we know 3 or 4 different agencies could potentially fund it, you can do that. You have to disclose to them that you've applied to different agencies with the same project at the same time. And if you are successful with multiple, you can only receive funding from one, right? So the key is there's no limitation, but if it's the same concept or research project, it can only be funded once by a singular agency. If it's different research projects funded by different agencies, no concerns there at all.
Okay, terrific. I'm gonna throw one more at you, Eric. I know we're
Sure.
coming at the end of the time here, but this one came in here a little late. I didn't get to all of them, and I'll address that here in just a second. But uh, can you answer to, does having a provisional patent help with the early phases of the application?
So this is a great question. So for SBIR, STTR, not necessarily, right? So when you think about these programs, is one, at a phase one, it literally can be the early concept of idea. If you do have a provisional patent or if you're bringing intellectual property, it's definitely not going to harm your cases. It shows it's going to probably help with some of the technical feasibility, but it's not an area that's required. And ultimately the technical data, the intellectual property developed under these awards, right, is going to be sort of new development. So if you do not have, if you're starting from scratch, you don't have any intellectual property you bring to the table, that's perfectly fine. If you have intellectual property you bring to the table, right, it's fine. It won't harm you, but I just want to be clear that that's not a requirement, and it won't be a negative if you don't have that in place.
Okay, terrific. Um, Concerning the slide deck, Eric, I believe you had mentioned that this information, you have it up on one of your websites. Is that accurate, or would you be
Yeah,
able to provide that to the recipients?
yeah, if so we do have it on our website. I don't know if we do have it on SBIR.gov. If you look on the SBIR.gov for entrepreneurs, I think a copy of the presentation is there. They should be able to access it. If you all sent anything out, Carlos, I'll be happy to provide you all a PDF copy to share as well if you wanted that.
Sure, I appreciate that.